This episode is produced and made possible with the help of Raycast Media.
Si le gustaría escuchar un episodio en español, por favor escuche el siguiente episodio.
Good morning, everyone, and happy Monday. My name is David Fuentes, and I'm part of the team here at the Economic Growth Business Incubator, also known as EGBI. So in case you don't know about us, we are a nonprofit organization that provides training, coaching, and support to existing and aspiring business owners. And so as part of the EGBI team, we came up with the La Incubadora podcast, which is a way for us to get you resources and information for you to succeed in your business on your own time and wherever you are, as long as you have access to a mobile device. And so over the years, we've received a lot of interest from folks who are interested in baking, preserving, or kind of creating more artisanal goods in their home kitchens. Also then selling them over to markets, to people, to their community, to their neighbors. And so if you're interested in baking, preserving, or creating artisanal goods in your kitchen, we've invited a very special guest today, and that's Kelley Masters from Texas Cottage Food Laws. Kelley Masters is the president and founder of Homemade Texas, and they've kind of been the driving force behind the law that's called Cottage Food Law. And so Kelley will share a little bit about their expertise on how you can both legally and safely start a successful home-based food business. But first, I want you to get know a little bit about Kelley before we get started. And so Kelley Masters is the president and founder of Homemade Texas. Kelley's citizen activism led to the filing of the first Texas Cottage Food Bill in 2009. When the 2009 bill died, she redoubled her efforts and started the Texas Bakers Bill's Facebook page in 2010 and worked tirelessly towards the ultimate passage of the first cottage food law in 2011 and every subsequent expansion. And Kelley has spent numerous hours mustering grassroots and media support, working with legislators, special interest groups, and has delivered more homemade cookies to the Texas Capitol than any person in history. She is a paralegal for a local law firm, lives in Central Texas with her husband, 3 children, 2 dogs, and 10 chickens. And so with that warm welcome, I'd like to invite Kelley over to the conversation to tell us a little bit more about Cottage Food Laws and share this information with the community. So thank you very much for making it, Kelley.
Oh, thank you for having me, David.
Yeah, and this podcast is interesting because it always gives me an opportunity to research more about the work that kind of both advocates and experts in the community are doing around small business. And this is a very interesting topic because, you know, I feel like this is something, a type of business that is very accessible to a lot of folks. And so getting kind of the information around the laws and the regulations is important for us and for our community. So thank you for making it.
Of course. Thank you.
Well, I did get a little bit of chance to learn a bit about your history and the history of your organization. But can you share with our community what kind of inspired you to get first involved in the cottage food movement and become an advocate for Texas Cottage Food Laws?
Yeah, and I don't think it's a very unusual story. Back around the time period of 2005, 2006, I was a young stay-home mom. I was kind of searching for my own thing that I could have, something I can contribute to the household. And I had always loved to bake, began taking cake decorating lessons at a local cake shop. And soon people started wanting to buy my cakes. And I thought it was like from heaven. It just dropped into my lap that I could make a few custom cakes every month, and that could be my own little business, my way to contribute. So I called everywhere. The internet wasn't as good then as it is now. So I did quite a lot of searching to try to find someone who would come and inspect my kitchen, because that's what I naturally assumed was the procedure, that one from the state would come and inspect my kitchen, and I would get a license, and I would be off to the races. And after a really frustrating afternoon, I finally got someone on the phone who said, no, that we don't do that. You can't do that from home.
Mhm.
So that's how it started. The next legislative session rolled around, and I had some previous experience when in the 90s, I worked for a state agency, and we interacted a little bit with the legislature. And so it wasn't unfamiliar to me. And I just thought I would write a letter to my state representative and my state senator and get them to do something about this, because I knew that there were a handful of other states in the country, about 10 or 12 at that point, that also allowed this.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine trying to navigate this. I'm pretty sure we have used your resources, the resources that you publish to help our clients and our community. But to go through the frustration, right? The initial having to do all this research, and especially trying to find like a supplemental form of income. I think, yeah, I appreciate you going through the struggle of that, because then it makes our role easier, and it makes the life of other home-based food producers a little bit easier too. And I'm happy to hear also the advocate piece that you have done in your past. So I think before we move forward, it might help to get folks a little bit more familiar with what cottage food law is. And so, Kelly, can you give us a kind of a brief explanation of what these laws are and how they might benefit home-based food businesses?
Yeah, so the Texas Cottage Food Law is, think of it like, sometimes I describe it as like an umbrella, or it's a carve
Mhm.
out from food licensing laws. And it's a small exception that says that you can make and sell certain foods in your home kitchen and sell them directly to the consumer. And the state or the county, no government gets involved in that. So there's no licensing, there's no inspection. It's kind of on the honor system, but it is a way to incubate a small business with very minimal investment from the
Mhm.
beginning. And so, yeah, that's what the cottage food law is.
Good, good. No, I'm happy. I think that's very important, right? The accessibility of starting a business like this.
Hmm.
You know, I think of our clients. So our clients typically, right? They don't have a lot of capital to start with. So this is something that you can start. If it's something, right? Especially if it's a family recipe, it's a recipe that you tried and proven, and people, you've sold it to your neighbors. It's a good way to start a formal business without too much investment. So thank you for that brief explanation.
Yeah, of course. And you know, previously, I mean, we heard stories of people spending $20,000 to build a commercial
Mm,
garden.
yeah.
And that's an investment that most people can't make. And also, it's important to notice that a lot of people don't, they start a cottage food business and then figure out it's not for them.
Mm,
And the cottage allows that to just kind of subside rather than ending up tens of $1,000s in debt, right? So I think that that's something that's not talked about a lot, but I think it's an important facet of it.
yeah. No, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. And so, talking a little bit more about the law, what are the types of food that are allowed to be produced under Texas cottage laws? And have you found that there are any significant restrictions that, our folks should be aware of?
Yeah. So cottage food law has undergone several evolutions since the first version was passed in 2011. But as of 2019 and what is currently the law today, you can sell virtually any food that you make in your home kitchen that doesn't require what they call time and temperature control for safety, which is really just a long way of saying refrigeration. So I sometimes explain it to
Mhm.
people as think of foods that you keep in your pantry, think of foods that are in the center aisles of the grocery store. So if you can store it safely at room temperature, there's a good chance that it's allowed as a cottage food. One big exception is meat products. Meat is federally regulated, and so like beef jerky, even though it can be stored indefinitely, would not be allowed under the cottage food law.
Okay. No, and I think that's a good example of what an organization like yours might do, right? Is kind of take these legal terms and translate them for the average person, right? So I
Yes,
think
I think so. Sorry to interrupt. That sometimes cottage food law as written can look very simple. It's in the uh, when you're employing it that you start to have a lot of questions. Well, wait a minute. What if I wanted to do this? And that's when you might reach out and need assistance.
okay, perfect. So for the most part, food that is can be stored at room temperature is safe, with the exception of things like meat, right? That's where my
Correct.
perfect. And so you've started your own home-based business. I'm sure a lot of folks listening are interested in starting their home-based business. Can you walk us a little bit through the process of what this looks like, of what the process of starting a home-based food business looks like? What kind of are the initial steps, and also how do we ensure that we're compliant with the law?
Yeah, so for people who visit my website, the splash page of my website, the kind of the hook says it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. So I break it down into 3 steps. And the first and most important one is to understand the law. You have to be able to understand what you can sell and where you can sell it. But
Mhm.
as the requirements to actually begin selling food, there's really only 2 legal requirements, which is first, you have to take a course in safe food handling. And that's the same course you would have to take if you went to work in a restaurant, if you were an employee in a restaurant. And that is, again, a low barrier. These cost about $10 or $15. There are many vendors you can take it from online, or you can even seek one out in person if you like that as well. So you have to take that food handlers course and get your certificate. That certificate's good for 2 years, so you do have to renew it every 2 years. And then the third thing is your food must be labeled, and it must be labeled with the required elements laid out in the labeling rules. You can't just decide yourself what you're going to label your foods with. But
Mhm.
that's it, 1, 2, 3. So, you can decide you want to have a cottage food business in the morning and be selling food by the evening.
That's a good way to put it. All right. So there are some restrictions, or rather, kind of process that we have to follow, and there it's the safe food handling, and then the labeling of the food.
Mhm.
So I think that's important information. And so from the beginning, when you first kind of started this advocacy piece around cottage food law, I'm sure you've seen some changes, and even through work through advocates like you, some improvements. And so, can you kind of tell us some of the key changes that have happened since the law first passed?
Yeah, sure. We're in a very different place now in
Hmm.
2024 than we were back in, 2009 or so. So, like I said earlier, around that time, there were only about 10 or 12 states that allowed this type of business.
Mm,
And so, and in 2011, when the first cottage food law was passed, we were kind of on the cutting edge of leading this charge. And I will say that today, all 50 states have some type of cottage food law. Some
mm,
are better than others, but Texas definitely was on the cutting edge. We were a leader in allowing that, but by being the leader, we had to break some barriers, and the barrier was just allowing this activity without licensing. And so, in retrospect, the law that we passed in 2011 was extremely limited. So, the
mm,
foods in 2011 that could be sold were baked goods, jams, jellies, and dried herbs. That
Mm,
was it. And they could only be sold from your home. You could not sell them from any other location.
that's interesting.
And so it in retrospect, it seems almost ridiculous. It seems like, how could anyone even run a business that way? But it's important to remember what a huge victory it was, because of the opposition that we had from every direction. We had opposition from, the cities and the counties and the health departments and the sanitarians and the Texas Restaurant Association and the Texas Retailers Association. You name all the big heavy hitters down at the Capitol who can wield some influence, and I'll bet you they were against the cottage food law.
Mhm.
So even as limited in scope as the 2011 law was, it was a huge victory. Since then, like I said, we went from 12 states who allow this to 50 states to allow this. And not only do more states allow it, but the scope of the laws, they keep pushing it a little further. So as as the bar keeps getting raised nationally, we've also responded and updated the cottage food law twice since then. So we had an update in 2013, and then we had another major update in 2019. So as I said, now you can sell any food that doesn't require time or temperature control, and you can sell it directly to the consumer anywhere in Texas.
Hmm. No, that's very interesting. I didn't know that piece about, right, not being able to sell outside your home, and I think sometimes we take these things for granted, right? Especially what I think about are the kind of the farmers markets, right? That really is a good entryway for a lot of folks, for a lot of
Yep.
small businesses, just to get awareness around their products and to get kind of their first customers. So yeah, some big changes and relatively recently. Um,
Yeah, farmers markets were added in 2013, but again, only there were still only a handful of locations. It was really in 2019 where we took out those location restrictions, that really allowed people to be more creative in finding their
mhm.
choice of sales locations. I mean, we have some bakers, I think, in Kingsland who have gotten together and created their own market. They call it the
Mm.
Cottage Bakers Market. Some people rent a kiosk in a mall, and bring their food there and sell it. So yeah, we're in a completely different place from where we were in 2011.
Yeah. And that also gives us some ideas for us too about where else these home-based businesses can sell, right? Besides just markets.
Mhm.
Kelly, can you show us also maybe some misconceptions that people have about, cottage food laws?
Um, I think that one of the most common, I don't know if I would call it a misconceptions, but maybe misunderstanding that I see,
Hmm.
um, is people who envision starting a cottage food law based on internet sales and shipping. So, something I have said repeatedly in our conversation so far that I haven't elaborated on yet is this idea of direct sales. So, you are selling your food directly to another customer. And so, to the legislature, the idea of this direct connection between you and your customer is vital to the idea of cottage foods. And so the cottage food law is really for local sales directly face to face. So there is really no mechanism in the cottage food law for shipping, for just taking orders over a website and then shipping them out to someone who's never met you. So I find that
Hmm.
that's one of the biggest misconceptions, that people envision their own, spin on a cottage food business that doesn't reflect what the law currently is.
Okay, and that's an important one, right? So
Oh
face
yeah.
to face. Yeah, no, and it's good that we're getting this information out. Again, it not only helps support our community, but it also helps us as a small business incubator to get informed about these laws, and learn also a little bit the history of it, right?
Yeah,
because things change, and we have to stay updated because they may change in the future as well.
I hope they do.
Yeah. And maybe that's another question that I might sneak at the end. We'll
Sure.
see. How do organizations like Homemade Texas support home-based food businesses? This is one of the resources we wanted to get our folks connected with.
Yeah, so Homemade Texas, which is my organization, I kind of wanted to just give a name and a formality to my activism.
Hmm.
So we can provide support to cottage food operators in several ways. First of all, we have a pamphlet, a book that called "How to Start a Cottage Food Law" that we send out to every new member with your membership. I will answer any questions for members and generally non-members as well. Like I said, the cottage food law might seem straightforward until you actually get down into it and, and try to formulate your business. And then that's when the
Hmm.
questions come up. So we provide support that way. And then we're very active in the legislative session, or organizing on Facebook, doing activism. We had a great bill in 2019 that almost passed. It made it through the Senate, and it came 7 bills away from being voted on before the deadline in the House. And so we were ready to expand the cottage food law yet again. And this would have allowed a whole new level of operating under the cottage food law. It would have added refrigerated foods like cheesecake. It would have allowed people to wholesale, so you could put your
Hmm.
products in a store or a restaurant. And so we really lead the charge on getting those changes made, and we'll be doing that again in the legislative session that's upcoming in January 2025. And now 14 years since the first cottage food law passed, and
Hmm.
unfortunately, we are still dealing with health departments who kind of um, flaunt the law
Hmm.
and seem to not really. We have written letters to many different cities and or counties who are doing things, charging illegal permit fees, or placing illegal requirements on cottage food operators. So those are really the ways that Homemade Texas supports cottage food operators.
Good, good. And also for the folks listening, we do have the kind of the website and the email address as well as a phone number below, which can help us with our next question. Kelley, so in case anyone wants to contact you, anyone wants more information, where can we find this information about Texas cottage food laws, and especially get the support folks need to start a at home business?
Yeah, so I maintain the website texascottagefoodlaw.com.
Mhm.
That is not an official site. That is entirely privately run. I think you'll find the information is very complete. There's even a checklist on there for what to do when you're ready to begin your cottage food business that leads you through it step by step. DSHS, the Department of State Health Services, they also maintain a website on the cottage food law that has some good information as well, and that's available on a Google search. But I am I am biased. I prefer my website as far as
Mhm.
the information that's delivered and the way it's presented.
Well, looking at it, I think I think I'll agree with you there. It's a little bit easier to navigate on yours. And so we have several resources here. Also, I do want to invite you all to the Lunch and Learn, which we have the opportunity to, again, to collaborate with Kelley Masters, and that's over to our Lunch and Learn on Tuesday, October 22nd at 11:30. It's a lunch and learn on Texas Cottage Food Law. And so we're going to host that over at the City of Austin Economic Development over on Ben White. And so you can register over on our website at egbi.org. You'll see Kelley there. She'll be leading the lunch and learn, and you can directly hear from her, learn about the history, and connect with meaningful resources to start your own at-home business. So Kelley, I really want to thank you for spreading this information out. I think it's important, and it's a very accessible way for someone to start a business. Um, and so, again, this podcast is to connect folks with the resources they need to be successful in their business. So I thank you for giving us this information.
Yeah, David, thank you so much for having me.
No, and this is what it's all about, right? And so for our folks listening, thank you all for helping me welcome Kelley today. Remember that La Incubadora podcast is a part of the Economic Growth Business Incubator. And if you need any assistance with your small business or connect with the resources, please visit egbi.org. And other than that, we'll see you all very soon. Thanks again, Kelley, and we hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you.